Let's bring in our guest, Ahmed Essop, who is an independent consultant and research associate at the Ali Mazrui Centre for Higher Education Studies at the University of Johannesburg. A very good afternoon to you, Mr. Essop. Thank you very much for your time. Just your thoughts, or what's going on in your mind as we wait for the swearing in of the new Minister of Higher Education.
Afternoon, Vuyo. Well, firstly, I think it's appropriate that the President axed Minister Nkabane, given the fact that she had lied to Parliament and to the public. I think it'd be a welcome fresh air for Buti Manamela to take over. The former minister did not have an understanding of the issues in higher education. She did not understand the policy and legislative framework of her portfolio. And in a sense, it's been a wasted year since she's been appointed. So I think from that point of view, Buti Manamela's appointment is a welcome sign for the higher education sector.
As far as you're concerned, she didn't even make an effort in the year that she was in charge?
Well, for a long period, she was nowhere to be seen. Earlier this year, when the new academic year started at universities, she was rushing around to various institutions who normally at the beginning of the year face various issues relating to registration, accommodation in terms of students. She was instructing vice chancellors what to do and what not to do, which is not her role to play. She was, in a sense, interfering in the operational management of institutions. The minister has every right to ask institutions to account for what is happening, but it's inappropriate for the minister to be rushing around, instructing vice chancellors what to do, and in some cases, instructing them contrary to higher education policy of her department.
You don't think that perhaps she may have been thrown in the deep end with no understanding or grasp of these issues, and she was hoping to learn as time goes by?
Well, she was appointed in July last year, and the first thing a new minister does coming into office is to familiarize him or herself with the portfolio that they're taking over. Now, either she didn't do that, or the department, in the case of the universities branch, did not familiarize itself with the policy and legislative framework, which partly may well be the case, because the department has been denuded of senior staff. But it's the minister's responsibility to make sure that she's familiar with her portfolio.
Buti Manamela is, of course, no stranger to the area. He's been deputy minister for a very long time. Steady hand?
He's been a deputy minister for since 2017, some 8 years. In his past, he was a student leader. In the 90s, early 2000s, he was the deputy president of SESCO. So I think he firstly understands the issues in higher education, particularly as it affects the universities. As a deputy minister, as all deputy ministers are not given any substantive role to play. So I think he'd be able to take and run with the portfolio and address the key issues that need to be addressed.
Let's talk about those key issues. What for you, or what should top his to-do list as far as you're concerned?
Well, I can speak more generally about the university's higher education. I think clearly, in the light of what has happened with the CETA appointments and so on, there's a major task ahead, both to restructure the technical and vocational education colleges and to rethink whether we require CETAs. It's arguable whether they play the role in providing the skills needs of industry. But in the case of higher education, there are two key issues that he needs to, amongst others, that he needs to address. The first is in relation to sort out the mess that is the NSFAS. As you know, there are continually challenges that students face in terms of accommodation. The NSFAS has not paid landlords for the rent and so on. And secondly, and most importantly, is the funding of higher education, the funding of universities. Universities' funding has gone down in the last 5 or 6 years. There's a shortfall of approximately 1.5 billion rand, and they're creaking at the seams. So unless they've been growing in terms of enrollments. So unless we address the funding issues in higher education, in the case of the universities, it's going to impact on their ability to deliver a quality service.
Where do you think lies, the problem? So the problem. For instance, I mean, at the beginning of the year, we had this a record number of people or students who passed matric, but there was not enough accommodation or preparation for their entry into university. Is it a lack of planning, and if so, on whose part?
Well, the lack of, in terms of the framework for higher education, the planning and the funding of higher education is the responsibility jointly of the department in conjunction with the universities. The department, in terms of the policy, should not be funding increased enrollments unless those enrollments can be appropriately accommodated within the higher education system and funded appropriately. As I said, enrollments have been going on up since 1994, but the funding has not kept up with the rise in enrollments. That's contrary to what was determined as higher education policy in the early 2000s, where it was argued that enrollments should be appropriately funded or the university should not be allowed to grow unless there's appropriate funding. That has not happened in practice. So we've allowed the system to go because of political pressures from students who want access to higher education, but we're not funding the universities adequately. And secondly, there have been decisions made for political reasons. For instance, when Jacob Zuma introduced free higher education without doing the appropriate modeling of what was required and so forth, and that's coming home to bite. So if you take the higher education budget, half that budget currently goes to the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, and the remainder, the other 50%, is going to fund the universities, which is unheard of.
Well, what do you think? I mean, universities as people who, institutions that create knowledge, is there are universities playing a role of actually dealing or coming up with solutions to some of these problems? In other words, where politicians have erred or don't seem too keen to actually find solutions, have we seen coming from the university, anything coming from the universities themselves to try and actually think around how to solve these problems and putting very real and practical solutions on the table?
Are you referring to higher education problems?
Higher education problems, in particular.
I think the universities have been engaging government over the last number of years in terms of the problems and challenges that they face. And as I indicated, the main challenge is funding. We need to provide adequate funding so that the students who come in, for instance, currently as we speak, 60% of the staff in the universities are temporary staff. Which is unheard of, which impacts on the quality of the provision that's being provided. They're temporary because the universities do not have the funds to employ permanent staff. The universities do not have the funds to provide the appropriate accommodation and to develop the infrastructure. So the key issue, if we want to grow the higher education system, is to provide appropriate funding. If we're not able to provide the funding, then government has to go publicly and say to the public that we're not going to allow the system to grow, but only to stabilize it at the current numbers to ensure that the funding is appropriate to the size of the system as it currently is constituted.
And the reason I'm asking that question is because, if, as you said, we had for a year someone who was undeserving and didn't seem to even care about what she had to do, then what hope do we have that we will have solutions coming from the politicians?
Well, I think, as I indicated, I think Buti Manamela understands the issues. He's been a deputy minister for the last number of years. He's been a student activist in higher education, and it requires a singular focus, both in terms of the CETAs and TVET colleges, but in terms of the universities, and to pay attention and to engage with the leadership, in the case of higher education, of the universities, of how to address the problems that they face. I don't think the former minister has done so other than running around and instructing vice chancellors what to do instead of finding solutions to the problems that institutions face. So I think Buti Manamela has the opportunity to take the leadership to ensure, firstly, in the context of the department that he's inheriting or has been part of, which is denuded of senior capacity. As we speak, I'm not sure what the latest data is, but earlier this year, 3 of the 4 chief directors in the university's branch were vacant, placed by acting people. 6 of the 13 director posts were vacant. So you can't run and regulate higher education if you don't have the appropriate capacity within the department to do so.
Well, let's hope that he does indeed rise to the occasion. But I'd like you to take a listen to what the MK Party, which is the opposition, official opposition in Parliament, says, criticizing Minister Nobuhle Nkabane's axing, calling it a sacrificial lamb of the government of national unity. Let's take a listen.
The administration has become complacent, fat and untouchable and sexist. Look at how they have dealt with the issue of Senzo Mchunu and how quickly they have responded to the black educated woman minister of higher education. She was just an easy soft target, a sacrificial lamb at the GNU altar. All things equal and fair, Minister Senzo Mchunu should have been fired in the same breath. This is a clear cowardice at the decisive moment by the president.
Your thoughts, Ahmed?
Minister lied to Parliament around the CETA issue. I think she should have been fired and axed a long time ago by the president. He didn't do so. I suspect he did so in the last 2 days or yesterday because of the appropriations bill that's serving before the National Assembly today, and given that various parties, the EFF and the DA, have indicated they would not vote for that bill if she was still in place. So I think in principle she should have been fired because she lied to Parliament. I'm not in a position to comment on the political machinations of the ANC, the internal machinations and issues around the GNU. So I think in principle she should go. And the fact that she's female has got nothing to do with the fact that she's not been competent in the post.
It's quite interesting. I mean, it's politics, as you say, playing itself out. Going to see tomorrow what those political parties that said they wouldn't be voting in support of the higher education budget because of the former minister will do, or what they will have to say. And I do remember asking the federal chairperson of the Democratic Alliance, which had said it was not going to vote in support of the higher education budget because of how rogue, they said, the higher education minister was. But let's just say that was indeed going to continue, which is unlikely at this stage. What do you think would be the impact of that on the higher education sector?
Well, if the budget, I mean, I don't fully understand the legal implications of not voting for the appropriations bill. But if the budget is not voted for, it means funds will not be appropriated to the Department of Higher Education and Training, which would impact on the operational running of higher education institutions, because the financial year for universities starts on the 1st of April. There's a 2-month or 3-month period before the bill gets passed, but they're allowed to continue to operate. So it would have major impact on the running of institutions. And I understand from looking at the media reports, there have been different views of whether, if any party voted against the appropriation bill, whether that would result in appropriations not being allocated to the department.
Well, this is how Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Higher Education reacted. The chairperson of that committee reacted to the axing of Dr. Nobuhle Nkabane.
The material conditions of last week Friday have changed. Reality is 2 colleagues who presented. The minister was going to have a right of reply. That's the big material condition that you are ignoring. I was going to respond because I know I know that some of you would have said we must ask them to speak because there's no difference. The minister was still not there last week. Somebody said that. But the material conditions from last week and today are different. The colleagues who presented their case, the minister was going to be given a chance to reply to that part on what they would have alleged, right? These ones who you are saying we must, just because we must be seen to be fair, the material conditions don't allow. They have changed. The minister is not there to respond as a minister on this part.
So, Nobuhle Nkabane was given all the chances and the time in the world to actually, do the right thing. And she just didn't take up those numerous offers that Parliament actually gave her.
Well, she didn't take up the offer because she lied to Parliament. It's quite clear from a few weeks back when Advocate Motau first went public that he had not participated in this independent panel. There were officials in the department who were supposedly members of the independent panel. If you're an official in the department, you can't be a member of the independent panel. I've worked in government in the past. Either you make suggestions and advise the minister on who to appoint as an official, which is a normal process. If the minister wants to set up an independent panel, it has to be independent. It can't be officials of the department who participate in the panel. They may provide support to the panel, secretariat support, but it's quite clear that the people that were appointed, other than Advocate Motau, who claims he didn't actually participate, didn't agree to the appointment. The rest were officials and advisors of the minister. By any stretch of the imagination, that's not an independent panel. As I said, it was quite clear if you read the record of the parliamentary proceedings from last Friday, it is quite clear that the minister lied, that the officials who participated claimed that provided the committee with the information about what their role was. So it's not clear to me what the chair of the portfolio committee is referring to. The minister could not come and answer the case because there was nothing for her to answer. She lied.